But first of all, what do ultraviolet and thermal lasers have in common? Apart from being pretty cool and the sort of things you'd find in an underground lair, they're also both used in 3D printing. It's a process that lets you make a three-dimensional solid object of pretty much any shape from a digital model. Now, I know it sounds like the stuff of science fiction, but 3D printing has become so big that one of Brisbane's leading universities has just launched a course in biofabrication. In a world first, they'll be teaching you how to use a 3D printer to make body parts. Or as I like to call them, body parts. So how exactly does 3D printing work? Jeff Condren is the managing director of 3dprinting.com.au, based in Geebung, right here in Brisbane. Not only does his mob specialise in 3D printing, he's part 3D printed himself. Is that a typo? Oh, there's a siren going off, so I'm thinking it might be. G'day, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Tim, and thanks very much for having me on the program.
Tell me about this, about you being part 3D printed.
Well, yes, when I was young, I went deaf in one ear, and I was deaf in that ear for about 34 years until I came across a Brisbane surgeon who was able to help me, and the component that he put in my ear was actually a very small titanium laser-sintered component, and that fixed my hearing.
No way.
Absolutely.
How awesome is that?
Well, it's kept me hearing. I can hear you 100% in both ears, but it went from basically no hearing at all for the better part of my life to almost as good as my good ear.
Wow. So is it because of that you wound up with this business, or did you start this business and then all of a sudden there was this application for a very remote, very small part of your person?
Actually, my wife and I, Janine, started the company about 10 years ago, and we were well into the business for a very long period of time before I had that particular operation. But when my surgeon showed me the component that he was actually putting into my ear, I recognised it immediately as an additive manufactured or 3D printed component.
How big is it, by the way?
A little bit larger than the oversized pinhead.
Okay. It's funny because I would never hear someone use the word large to describe anything to do with the pinhead apart from in this context. So tell me a little bit about 3D printing and what it can do, and if indeed there's anything it can't do.
Well, in terms of the limitations, you're only really limited by your own imagination, perhaps the size or the materials that you're using to do a particular application. So not a lot of limitations. There are many different types of machines available in the marketplace at this time, and there will be more machines coming on to the market for more specialised type of work in the future. So limitations, very few.
What does it mean for medicine in particular? Because a lot of the most interesting applications we hear about do indeed affect people just like you.
Well, medicine is groundbreaking in this particular application. There's so much research and development in material science for biocompatibility materials. As you mentioned before about 3D printing human body parts, this is happening at the moment in Canada, and we're seeing examples of 3D printed ears and 3D printed noses that form the scaffold of skin grafts. So they're actually placed on the patient, and then skin graft is grafted over the top of the scaffold, and the 3D printed component is integral with the body, so the cells grow through the 3D printed component.
What do you know about this course in Brisbane, in which people will be taught to use 3D printers to make body parts? Can you be a part of that sort of conversation, do you think, Jeff?
I haven't been involved in it at this time. We were certainly approached by state government a year or so ago to run a course in 3D printing, and at that time we weren't set up to be able to facilitate that. But there is certainly a greater demand to be able to design and understand how 3D printers work and how to get the best out of them and how to get the best out of design for 3D printing.
And is the technology being refined at a rapid rate, or is it about as refined as it's ever going to be?
It is going ahead with leaps and bounds. It's very difficult to keep up with the new technologies and the new advances that we see happening in the marketplace every single week, really. There's a new application or a new group who's studying a new application or a new way to 3D print components, anything from the biocompatible to the skin graft to buildings to plastics. You name it, there's research getting done on it.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for telling us about it, but also telling me your story with this tiny, tiny thing in your ear that has made your hearing work 100%.
I am certainly a better person for it.
Yep, and that's my wife ringing to see if she can order a couple for me. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
Jeff Condren, Managing Director of 3dprinting.com.au, based in G.